This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast, which is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another fine episode, hopefully, of your liking of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Remember to go check out this podcast, give it a rate, subscribe to it, hit the little bell so every time a new episode comes out, you guys will know. And also go check out some of the other podcasts in the GSMC Podcast Network. There is a lot of stuff that you guys will like. The reason I know that is because we have literally every topic out there. So if you like business, if you like financial, if you like book reviews, movie reviews, baseball, football, fantasy football, MMA, you name it, we have it. There's even a sex podcast, very informal, and will give you tips on how to further your love life. So check it out. But as always, we like to say, come back here and definitely tune into our GSMC Sports Podcast, where me, Kayvon Izami, is going to take you through the biggest and hottest sports topics, as well as some of the smaller ones that you guys might not hear on that national type media, or maybe even your local media. I do like to get involved in some of these topics and news headlines that aren't as eye-popping sometimes, but in my mind, in my opinion, there's a lot of weight that carries in some of these topics. So we'll be doing that a lot during the summertime when sports is, at its lowest peak. Baseball obviously at its highest peak, but other than that, you really don't have much going on in the summer. But right now, we're jam-packed. And let me just first of all say, welcome to Selection Sunday, baby. It is finally here. We have been waiting 2 years, because remember, we didn't get Selection Sunday last year because of the pandemic. The pandemic started, wherever, depending on what you determine as when the start happened. But in terms of sports, it really hit the sports world on March 11th, right? That was when Rudy Gobert, patient zero, he was the first one to get tested and was positive with coronavirus to our knowledge. And that ended up, canceling that Oklahoma City, Utah Jazz game right before it started. And remember the whole scene of Mark Cuban at the Mavericks game getting the text message from Adam Silver saying the season's going to be canceled, or it's going to be suspended for now. They ended up finishing it in a bubble, as we all know. And everything followed after that. Really, everything followed. The NBA was the one to start that. And it was just a trickle-down effect. Remember, we had conference tournaments going on, and games were getting stopped halfway through the tournament. And then next thing you know, the big news came out that the NCAA March Madness would be canceled. So we didn't get March Madness last year. So as we stand right now, Virginia is still the reigning champs, and they won this 2 years ago. A little bit of irony in it is that Virginia is actually dealing with COVID-19 issues right now and had to drop out of the ACC tournament. But I did get a report earlier today saying that Virginia and Kansas, and if Duke makes the tournament, which I don't think they will, but if they do, those teams will all be eligible and able to play in the tournament. So for all you Kansas and Virginia fans, that's big news out there. So we finally are here, Selection Sunday, and if you guys have been listening to the shows as of recent, you know I'm a huge March Madness fan. It is one of my favorite times of the year. You really can't beat it because you have games from noon to midnight every single day. Next Thursday and Friday, I personally take off work on those days to just sit down and watch basketball. And I know I've said this spiel, so all of you listening, I'm sorry, I got to say it again, but you got to go out with the handwritten bracket. You have to. On Selection Sunday starts at 7 p.m. tonight. Team by team, they're going to release the bracket. Do me a favor. Go out and print your own bracket, get a pen, and write in every single team, who you think's going to win, who you think's going to advance, and hang that bracket up. That will be your bracket to cherish. I do it every single year. I know we have apps for that now, but I still am very old school because there's nothing like writing in a bracket team by team. It's just a fantastic feeling. So definitely give that a try if you haven't. For those of you that have done it, you know what I'm talking about. You guys are ones that for sure do it because once you do it the first time, you just love doing it. It's fun. It's a way to track how well you do with some of these games. So we're going to break down on our show on Wednesday. We're going to break down the whole tournament. See, I thought about waiting to record this until tonight when the bracket actually comes out, but I thought it would be better to let the bracket come out and then right before the games start on Thursday, I'll use that entire Wednesday show to break down everything. We'll go game by game. We'll look at some of the favorites to win the tournament. Right now, I think it's hard to not pick a Gonzaga or Illinois, two teams that just look unstoppable, especially Illinois. Illinois is playing some of the Big Ten, in my opinion, is the best basketball conference this year. They're stacked top to bottom, right? They're going to have a good 10 teams maybe make the tournament. Yeah, I think 8, 9, 10 teams, depending on Michigan State and Maryland, but they'll definitely get in Michigan, Illinois, Iowa, Purdue, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Rutgers. So they're a stacked conference, and Illinois has just been beating teams left and right, not just beating them. They beat Michigan by 20 plus. They beat Ohio State a couple times. They've beaten up on Iowa, and now they're in the Big Ten finals right now, going up against Iowa State. If Illinois wins this game against Iowa State, they 100% should be the number 2 overall seed behind Gonzaga. So Gonzaga will be the best number 1 seed. Illinois should be the second best number 1 seed right behind them because of their schedule, their strength of schedule, and the fact that they just keep stringing together big wins after big win, top 10, top 5 wins over and over. Tough schedule being in that Big Ten, and they keep on winning. So that right now is my team to pick to win it all. Now, obviously, I have to see the bracket because the bracket changes everything depending on who could be in their path. Like who's going to be the number 2 seed in the bracket, who's going to be the number 3 seed. These are the things that just quick little tips here, and we've got a packed show to talk about today, guys, and some of the things we're going to run through real quick. For those of you that are new to the show, I always like to open up the first segment. Unless there's a big headline going on, I'll go right into that. But other than that, I like to open up the first segment just kind of discussing some of the things that are going on in the sports world right now, some of the bigger topics, and then hit on a more smaller topic, specific topic as we go from there. So to start the second segment, we're going to be talking about free agency. Free agency is starting up here in the NFL, and it is going to be the most fascinating free agency that we have ever seen in NFL history. It will be the most turbulent, the most volatile, whatever adjective you want to use, it's going to be that because it's going to be a ball game, a whole different type of free agency that these teams, us fans, media members, players, GMs, coaches have never been through or dealt with before. And I'm going to explain why that is in starting at next segment. So stay with me there. We're also going to talk about the Patriots re-signing Cam Newton. Why did they do this? Why? I'm not criticizing it. I'm just asking why. I will explain to you guys why I think they did that. And I'm also going to go down a little hole here of what's going on with Bill Belichick. Is his ego going to be the downfall of what's going to happen, what possibly could happen for years to come since Tom Brady has left? I'll explain that as well. Tom Brady, once again, is taking a team-friendly deal to help out his team. That is what we're going to talk about. Should more athletes go down the road of what Brady's doing? And then obviously we'll talk some more Selection Sunday, which I want to just hit on here real quick before we go into that next segment of talking about free agency. And what that is with the whole Selection Sunday right now. If you look at Joe Lunardi, who is the bracketologist of all he is the one that created bracketology, right? Bracketology is when you just all basketball season long, you're predicting who's the 1 seeds, who's the 2 seeds. So some of the things that I look at when I'm talking about filling out a bracket, the first thing is I look at the 1 seeds and who's the 2 seeds in their division. Because the 1 seed, at some point, there will be upsets and stuff like that, obviously. But, if they are going to meet their number 2 seed in the Elite Eight, who is that going to be? Who has the hardest 2 seed? Then I go and look at the 3 and 4 seeds. I say, okay, could this 3 or this 4 seed make a run? Could they actually come out and win their region? Because it's all about winning the region. You don't want to look ahead and say who's going to win the Final Four. Obviously, we write that in our bracket. But first, you have to predict who do you think is going to win the region. Then I go to upsets. And I first start with the 5 and 12 game. Because the most likely upset we see every single year is the 12 seed beating the 5 seed, right? That is you always want to pick 1 or 2 12 seeds upsetting the 5 seeds. So I go through that and I say, okay, which 12 seed looks appealing? Which 12 seed looks like they could beat a 5 seed, right? That's one of my first favorite things to look. And then I get a little bit wilder with it, right? Then I go deeper. Okay, could I see a 13 seed, right? Could I possibly see a 4 seed losing to a 13? Or go even further. Could I see a 15 seed beating a 2 seed? Or a 14 seed beating a 3 seed? These happen sometime, right? And then obviously we've only ever had one 16 seed beat a 1 seed. That's only happened one time. It happened 3 years ago when UMBC beat Virginia, and Virginia came right back the following year with revenge and won the whole tournament. So that's not going to happen often because it's only happened one time since the tournament started, but we have seen 2 seeds lose before. We see 3 seeds, 4 seeds, and then especially that 5 seed. So I first like to look at the bigger picture, the 1 seeds and the 2 seeds. Who has the toughest route out of all the 1 seeds? Then I look at the 3 and 4. Can a possible 3 seed beat a 4 seed? Can a possible 3 or 4 seed win the bracket? Can they come out of the region? Then you look at some upsets, and then the final thing I look at is, can I see a wild card? A George Mason, a VCU, a Loyola Chicago. Can I see one of those crazy wild card, amazing stories where they make a run to the Final Four? Now, obviously, it is really hard to predict those, right? That's why March Madness is so amazing, because a team like Loyola, who nobody even knows, goes on a Final Four run. Or a team like George Mason or VCU. These type of things happen, which is what makes March Madness and the history and the stories and just the sheer surprise and shock and the unpredictability of March Madness is what makes it so amazing. So those are some things that I look at first when it comes to filling out my bracket. Just some little tips that you guys can look at when in a couple hours your brackets come out. Now, right now, if we look at what Joe Lunardi has, okay, so he does on the bubble, right? On the bubble are the teams that are either barely into the tournament right now or barely out of the tournament right now. And if you're in it, you're hoping to stay in. If you're out of it, you're hoping some crazy things happen where you can get pushed in. So right now, the last 4 teams that he has in are Syracuse, Louisville, Drake, and Utah State. So those teams are most likely in the tournament, okay? Because now that we only have a couple of games left, there's not much that can happen to help some of those teams get lifted out of the tournament, or to hurt some of those teams, I should say, get demoted out of the tournament. Unless maybe like right now we have the American Conference Final going on and it's Houston versus Cincinnati. If Cincinnati was to upset Houston, they would steal an automatic bid. What does that mean? That means that they were not going to win. They weren't going to make the tournament based off how they performed in the regular season. They just didn't have a good enough regular season. But as we all know, you get an automatic bid if you win your conference tournament. So a team like Oregon State, who was probably not going to make the tournament based on how they performed in the regular season, but then they went and they won their conference tournament, we call them a bid stealer, right? Because they ended up stealing an automatic bid when they weren't going to make that tournament. So that actually hurts teams like Syracuse or Louisville or Drake, those last 4 teams that are in. That hurts them because that kicks one team out because one team stole a bid into a tournament, because there can only be so many teams that make the tournament, right? So the Georgetowns, who went on that phenomenal run to win the Big East, they're a bid stealer. But now that we've gotten to Sunday, Cincinnati is the only team left that could be a bid stealer, because you got Houston playing Cincinnati and they're up 13 right now. They're up 14 right now, actually, with starting the second half. And then you got Illinois versus Ohio State. Both of those teams are already in the tournament, so that doesn't matter. So there isn't much else that you could have where teams are stealing bids, right? That's it. Now, St. Bonaventure did beat VCU in the Atlantic 10 tournament, but I think St. Bonaventure was already into the tournament, so they wouldn't count as a bid stealer. They should be good. So that's kind of where we stand with the bubble. Right now, Joe Lunardi has Gonzaga as the top overall number 1 seed, just like I said. They have Wichita State as the first team out. So the first team that's out means they're the team that would not make it, and they're literally the last team that gets cut off, which is tough. And then the last team they have in, so it would be Utah State. So Utah State is on the right side, Wichita State's on the bad side. Now, one thing to keep in mind, the NCAA this year the whole tournament is happening in Indianapolis. It's not a bubble, but it's a type of a bubble, right? It's not a sure thing bubble like the NBA did, but it's more of it's like a looser bubble, okay? So there's a lot of restrictions. They're trying to be better with it, but it is not an actual full-on bubble. So if a team was to have a COVID outbreak, they will replace that team before the tournament starts. Once the tournament starts on Thursday, if a team has a COVID outbreak, the team they're playing automatically advances, which sucks. We really hope that doesn't happen. We don't want to see teams advance for no reason, right? We also obviously don't want to see teams have outbreaks, of course. But if a team has an outbreak before the tournament starts, then a team is able to replace that team. So, just for example, let's say it's Tuesday and an outbreak happens. Wichita State, if they were the last team to not get let in, they would take that team's spot, okay, if that was to happen. Hopefully that doesn't happen. We don't want anything like that to happen, but they're not in a surefire bubble, so anything could happen because we still have to remember this is a pandemic. This is the GSMC This is the GSMC Sport Podcast. I keep doing that. I'm going to get used to it sooner than later. Hang with me there. But this is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon. One segment down. We're going to come take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to switch gears here to the gridiron, talk some football. Free agency. It's going to be the most turbulent free agency in the history of the NFL. Why is that? Stay tuned. You're going to want to hear what I have to say. It's going to affect all of you out there and your teams. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kayvon Izami. Hope everyone's having a fantastic weekend. Happy Sunday. You're probably listening to this on Monday and Tuesday, so happy early part of the week. And happy Selection Sunday and March Madness week begins, ladies and gentlemen. We are finally here. Remember, we did not get it last year, so the fact that we're getting it this year just tastes so much better, makes it so much more exciting. And I really just hope that the NCAA has a great plan. Now, they've came out with all their protocols and everything they're going to do, but again, this is not a bubble, right? This is a loose bubble. So there could be chances and possibilities that teams do catch the virus and that there is an outbreak. And the last thing we want to see is that teams get rewarded to moving on in the NCAA tournament when they didn't win. Like we saw in the ACC tournament, Georgia Tech automatically got to go to the finals because Virginia had an issue with coronavirus. Texas got to go all the way to the finals because Kansas had an issue with the coronavirus. Florida State, same thing. So these things happen in the ACC tournament, and it's unfortunate. It does. It sucks to see that, but that's kind of what we're living in, and I just want to use that narrative to just point out that even though we are finally kind of seeing a light at the end of the tunnel of this pandemic, and it does really feel like we're getting there, states are opening up a little bit more, teams are starting to allow fans in the building. I also just want to point out the sure reality that we are not done with this. And it kind of hit me, I kind of started to get into that mindset of, oh my gosh, this is over, or it's about to be over. Then I got the news of Kansas had to drop out of the tournament, and then Duke had to drop out, and then Virginia, and it just kind of refreshed our minds that while we do see that an end is near, somewhat near, we're still not out of this, and there are still thousands and thousands of people dying every day. So just something to keep in mind while you're going out with doing things with your life, to just be aware that we're almost through this. We're so close. I mean, there's still a long ways to go, but we definitely made far progress. But also, people still are catching the virus. There is still other variants out there that we don't really fully know about, and people still are dying. And it's just something to be smart, be sensible, social distance, wear your mask still. Even if people tell you not to, please still wear your mask. And that's all I'm going to say on it. But I just hope in the sports world, especially for March Madness here, that we don't really get affected by it, that these teams and the NCAA do the best that they can. Because, look, at the end of the day, we all know what this is about. It's about money, okay? The NCAA lost millions to billions of dollars not having this tournament last year. That's just plain and simple. And the reason they're having it this year is because they can't afford to lose that much money 2 years in a row. So that's why they're having a tournament, and I'm fine with that because I want to see a tournament. But I also understand that they're doing it for the money, right? So they're going to do everything they can to have this tournament, and we have to understand that. And that means if a couple teams have to move on and other teams have to forfeit, they're going to say, so be it. That's how it is because we need this tournament to happen. Let's just hope that we don't get to that situation. Let's just hope this tournament goes swell. Let's just hope the protocols work. The teams are listening and following the protocols. We'll see what happens from there. But happy Selection Sunday to you guys. And I can't wait to fill out our brackets later tonight. And again, we'll dive into all things March Madness with the bracket on our Wednesday show that will come out on Thursday, which is when the game starts. So stay tuned. Again, go on wherever you guys listen to your podcast and hit that little bell. So Thursday morning when this show comes out, you guys can listen to it and get all of the info. I'm telling you, I will have some great info on upsets to pick, teams who I think can win it all, Final Four predictions. You're going to want to hear it. So stay tuned for that and update yourself on that one. Now, let's change our attention to the gridiron here. All right? NFL, baby. It is free agent time. Free agency is officially beginning. Some big news. Dak Prescott has been signed for pretty much the richest guaranteed money that we've seen in not just quarterbacks, in all of positions. He got the biggest money there. And I'm happy for him. That was awesome. If you haven't heard my take on that, go and listen to the previous show, and you will hear all about that. And I'll dive into that again as we go. But it just had me thinking about what free agency is going to be like this year. For all of you that do not know and haven't got the information, the salary cap this year is set at $182.5 million. So each team has a salary cap of $182.5 million. Remember, the NFL is a hard salary cap league. There's a difference, right? The NBA is a soft salary cap league. What does that mean? That means that in the NBA, teams can spend over the salary cap limit. So let's say the salary cap, for instance, and I have to look this up. I don't know what it is for the NBA, but let's just say it's $200 million, all right? Teams cannot, they can spend more than $200 million, but for every dollar that you spend more than that, you pay a massive luxury tax. I mean, the owners pay, it's insane. Like, it's just out of this world. But owners will do that to ensure them that they can hopefully win championships. Like, when LeBron was in Cleveland all those years with Kyrie and Kevin Love, they were paying over the cap every single year, but they also were getting to a finals every year, so it didn't matter. The Warriors, same thing, right? The NHL is also, the NBA is a soft cap. The NFL and the NHL are hard salary cap leagues. That means that you cannot spend $1 above the cap for any reason. You cannot. And Major League Baseball is the only league that doesn't have a salary cap at all. So you can spend as much money as you want. But the NFL is a hard cap league. So when they set the cap at $182.5 million, every team has to make sure that they don't spend over $102.5 million. A lot of teams right now are actually over that cap in the first place. So they have to do a bunch of work of restructuring contracts, turning things into bonuses and cutting players, all that stuff to get under the cap. That's how the NFL works. Last year, the salary cap total was my handwriting's so bad I can't read it sometimes. $198.2 million. So it is $17 million down, or excuse me, $16 million decreased from last year. Why? Because of the pandemic, right? The NFL lost a bunch of money because the pandemic, because they weren't able to have fans in the stands, all the TV, all of that's, well, they did get their TV money, but fans in the stands, concessions, all of that stuff that went on with the pandemic, that's why the cap went down. Now, it's such a, booming industry, the cap will go right back up, but for this year, teams are going to have to work with a decreased salary cap, a lower cap. So that brings up this conversation. When Adam Schefter the other day tweeted out that the salary cap is set at $182.5 million, and I realized that it's $16 million lower, guys, $16 million is a star player, right? Allen Robinson is getting paid $18 million on the franchise tag. That is a star-level wide receiver, a star-level running back, or being able to bring in a good passer. I mean, that is a big-time player, right, to lose that much of cap. So I thought, man, this is going to be a fascinating NFL year. It's going to be the most turbulent and volatile offseason in NFL history, based off a bunch of factors, numerous and myriad of factors, including player movement. And I'll go through more reasons of why throughout the segment, but a quick synopsis of that statement is because of the cap, because of the salary cap, right? $182.5 million it goes down to, or 198 goes down to 182. First of all, uniquely, so I don't know that I've ever seen this, but the top two teams in the NFL draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars are number one. They're taking Trevor Lawrence, and the Jets are number two. We've discussed this a million times of what the Jets could do, but they might trade down, they might take someone there, whatever. Those two teams are 1 and 2 in the draft, and they're also 1 and 2 in salary cap space. All right? Those two have the most salary cap space to spend. All right, so you've got two terrible teams that have a multitude of holes, that also have holes in their roster, right? They need to build up their team, but they also have a ton of draft equity and big checks to fill those shoes. That's number one. Second, you have a situation with the Patriots, and we have not seen the Patriots have this luxury in quite some time, and that is they will have the ability to do the free agent thing in a manner that they usually elect not to do. The Patriots have roughly $70 million in free agent money to spend. That is a lot of dollars to spend. That is a ton of money to spend, especially a team that has a lot of holes needed, like the Patriots do. You also have a team like the Colts, who will have somewhere around $60+ million in cap space. And they're an anomaly, because what's one thing that the Patriots, the Jets, and the Jaguars all have in common? They all had losing years last year. The Colts went 11-5 and made the playoffs. The Colts are in a fantastic situation. You don't always see a team that goes 11-5 and make the playoffs and also have $60+ million to spend in free agency. It is very rare for that to happen in a hard salary cap or even a soft salary cap league. So the Colts, because of their GM Chris Ballard and their situation, they've done a fantastic job. They will be really interesting to follow. Now you have the mix in players who are free agents, right? If you need a star receiver, hey, you got Kenny Golladay, possibly Juju Smith-Schuster, right? Or maybe go with a little gadget type guy like Curtis Samuel out of Carolina. What about the tight end? Tight ends, you got Jonnu Smith, Tennessee decided not to re-sign. You have Hunter Henry, Tennessee decided not to re-sign. The Chargers decided not to franchise tag. Two pretty good tight ends right there. Guarantee you one of them ends up in New England. And I bet you it's Hunter Henry. But we'll have to see. That's just a little prediction I have, right? Again, defensive back studs, Shaq Barrett. Remember, the Bucs decided to franchise tag Chris Godwin, not Shaq Barrett. So Shaq Barrett is now a free agent. This offseason is going to be nuts. And there's going to be a lot of movement, and it's already, we already know this because all these guys are free agent, and it's not unexpected because of the decreased salary cap and the fact that you have to make decisions, some hard decisions about the franchise tags, and we saw that with the defending champions, right? Because of the decreased salary cap, these organizations, these teams have to make really tough decisions on really good players. And that's what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just endured. They decided to franchise tag. You can only give out one franchise tag. Each team can only give out one franchise tag if you want to give that out. You don't even have to franchise tag anyone, but you can if you want. And the Bucs decided to franchise tag Chris Godwin, their receiver, instead of Shaq Barrett, which I was kind of confused personally why they did that. Because I think a good pass rusher is harder to find than a good wide receiver. And that's no knock on Chris Godwin, but when you have a really good pass rusher, it can affect the game much more impactfully than a really good wide receiver can, especially when your quarterback is named Tom Brady, who has literally made a living off of throwing to lesser talented wide receivers. I mean, that's just what it is. He does great with great wide receivers, but he also doesn't always need that big name guy. And he does have Mike Evans and Gronk still there, and most likely Antonio Brown as well. But the Buccaneers decided to go the other way. They decided to go with tagging Chris Godwin and hoping that they can come to an agreement on a deal with Shaq Barrett. But Shaq, he hasn't been paid, right? I mean, he was on a short, 2-year deal after being a backup essentially in Denver. He showed out the last 2 years. He already has 2 Super Bowl rings. That's a guy to me that probably is ready to open up the bank, break the bank, get the cash money. That's what he's probably going to want to do, in my opinion. And the Buccaneers aren't going to be able to do that. So, yeah, there's going to be movement, and I think it's great for the league, to be honest with you. I think it's really fascinating and just awesome for the league because very rarely do you see so many good players. And, we've talked about the quarterbacks and all that movement that could happen, but I mean, everywhere, good players, wide receivers, defensive backs, tight ends. You have all of these positions and all of these players with new chances to start over. And that is awesome for the fan. That's awesome for all of you out there listening. Why? Because free agency gives us hope. It gives you a chance to remake your team and actually remake your team really quickly, right? If you get a couple of these free agents, if you have the cap space to do so and you hit on those guys, boom. Guess what? You turn your team around like that. Or for good teams that want to turn into great teams and you're missing that one piece, free agency is the place to get that piece you need. And this year, there will be tons of opportunities to go out and get that piece to make you a better team or to make you a great team. And there is the opposite as well. Obviously, sometimes it can be like buyers beware, right? Is your team trying to spend money just because they can or because they want to strengthen the season ticket numbers, sign someone that will sell jerseys, sells tickets, all that stuff, which is not a bad thing to an extent, right? You do want to sell tickets. You do want to sell jerseys, the whole marketing appeal. I understand that. But obviously, the end goal is to make your team better. So all of that is one of the reasons why this offseason is going to be crazy. But that doesn't even address Deshaun Watson. Will he eventually get traded? Russell Wilson, is something going to happen to him? Or what happens in the draft? I mean, think about the draft in itself. Do the Jets draft a QB at number 2 overall? If so, what happens with Sam Darnold? Do the Falcons take a quarterback to learn behind Matt Ryan? Do the Dolphins trade out a number 3? What do the Patriots do at QB? Are they really running it back with Cam, or is that their plan B? Which, by the way, we will talk more about this later in the show and what the signing of Cam Newton means for the Patriots, so stay tuned for that. but it's going to be nuts. Free agency is going to be wild. And you know what the most fascinating part about free agency is this year? Stay tuned, because I'm going to tell you guys the most fascinating part of why this free agency is going to be so turbulent and so chaotic and so great for all of you out there listening and all of your teams. Do not go anywhere. I'll explain that right after this, and then we'll talk Cam Newton to the Patriots on a 1-year deal for another year. For all you Patriot fans out there, is this the move that you wanted to see? I mean, is this the right move by Bill Belichick and the Patriots? Or is Bill Belichick, does he have something else up his sleeve? Is this just kind of a shadow so that people know, hey, we've got Cam, but let's see what else could happen? We'll talk about that right after this. Don't go anywhere. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
You are listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the show. Hope everyone's having a fantastic Sunday and a fantastic early part of this week, of your week, whenever you're listening to this, however you're listening to this, and wherever you're listening to this. We really do appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your day to listen to me and the GSMC Sports Podcast. So what a day. Some breaking news has come in. Obviously, we've been talking about the NFL and free agency. Well, more to do with free agency because the news that we all thought was going to happen, but we started to get a little bit skeptical as the time went on and it took longer and longer. But Drew Brees has officially announced that he is retiring from the NFL. Now, we all thought this was going to happen. We all thought it was eventually inevitable, right? He definitely lost a lot of his arm power. He had a couple turnovers. He had 3 to be exact in that playoff game against the Bucs. And let's be real, they would have won that game if it wasn't for those turnovers. So the time was now. It's right that Drew Brees did this. It sucks for Saints fans and for Drew Brees that it ended this way. I know that they really wanted to get one more Super Bowl, but it just shows how hard it is to win a Super Bowl in the NFL. Look, you look at Tom Brady and you see him winning so many, and these teams thinks it's easy, right? Oh my gosh, if he's won 7, it's not. Tom Brady is an anomaly. The Saints had Drew Brees for, 15 years? And they won 1 Super Bowl. They only went to 1 Super Bowl. You could say it's a letdown, right? But it's hard. It's really, really hard to win a Super Bowl. But anyways, Drew Brees is a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer. Yes, I'm a Falcons fan, and I am still saying that. Obviously, I hate the Saints. Sorry, New Orleans fans, but that's just how it is. But Drew Brees is amazing. He's a good guy. He's great in his community. The fans love him. His teammates love him. He is truly a good leader of men. And he's a surefire Hall of Famer. He's one of the best quarterbacks to do it. Especially, he's kind of, in some ways, a game changer in what he did with the way he threw for so many yards, right? Nowadays, all these quarterbacks are throwing for 5,000 yards, but Drew Brees was the first to do that. Drew Brees was slinging it around for 5,000 yards every single year until the NFL kind of switched to that type of style, and now all these quarterbacks are doing that. So he kind of opened the gates for that. He also opened up the gates for guys like Baker Mayfield and Russell Wilson, shorter quarterbacks that before Drew Brees came in and had success, Kyler Murray, right, the NFL wasn't even looking at these guys. It was, if you're not 6'3" and can see over your offensive line, we're changing your position or you're not playing in the NFL, right? That's kind of how it was. Drew Brees came in at a shorter height, and he was so dead point on accurate. The Saints had to take a chance on him. Obviously, we all remember the Chargers are the team that drafted him. Drew Brees had that shoulder injury. They went and drafted Phillip Rivers. They moved on from Drew Brees. He went to the Saints, and the rest is history. A true Hall of Fame career, a pioneer, changed the game. Drew Brees will be a first ballot Hall of Famer one day. There is no doubt about that. And he's going to, look, he already has his broadcasting career signed up. I forgot which company. I think it's Fox that he signed a contract with once he retires. And he's going to be a fantastic broadcaster. There is no doubt about that. But nice little congrats to Drew Brees on a Hall of Fame career. I know it didn't go the way a lot of you Saints fans wanted to towards the end. As a Falcons fan, can't say that I'm too mad about that. But hey, it is what it is. Drew Brees had a remarkable career. He is truly one of the best quarterbacks to ever do it. But it was time. It was time. Coming back for another season would have just been fighting off, what we call it, father time, right? It would have just trying to fight that off, and that never ends well. It just doesn't. It's tough. I can't even imagine how tough a decision is, because for his entire life, all he knows is football, suit up, suit up for games, go to practice, work out, that's it. It's hard to give something like that up when you've done it your entire life. But he made the right decision, because you also don't want to get to the point where you're becoming a problem for your team, right? Where it's becoming, you're the reason why your team is losing. And when you're that good of a quarterback, that's not how you want people to remember you. So Saints now have a tough decision of what they're going to do. A lot of people believe they will bring back Jameis Winston and use Taysom Hill a little bit. We'll see what happens from there. I personally, I don't know. I think Sean Payton really likes Jameis Winston, so I think he will try and go that route, and we'll see what happens. And that's something we'll dive into. This is just a little breaking news, happens out of nowhere, so I wanted to announce that to you guys. But we will, throughout the offseason, go team by team and look at their situations and so on. Jameis Winston's time, though. Look, Taysom Hill, as much as people like what he can do with his legs and everything, he's not an NFL quarterback, okay? He's not a every single down NFL quarterback. He's just not. Once teams get a lot of film on him, they will end up learning some of his techniques and everything, and they'll expose him. He'll be great with his legs. He's extremely athletic, but he's not going to be an every down passer. The best thing for the Saints is to keep using Taysom Hill the way they've been using him. Bring him in spurts, use him in different parts of the game, use him as a wide receiver, use him as a running back, bring him in at quarterback a couple plays a game, but make sure you have that Drew Brees, that legit starting quarterback for most of the game. And I think they're going to try that with Jameis Winston under center, and we'll see what happens. One thing we do know, Jameis Winston has a lot of pure talent, right? He was the number 1 overall pick for a reason. He won a national championship at Florida State for a reason. The guy can spin the football. There's no doubt about that. The problem is he is way too careless with the football. He turns the ball over too much. He's the first one ever to throw 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions in a season. Why? Because you just don't see someone to turn the ball over that much, but also someone with so much talent where they could throw that many touchdowns. So the good news is he's got Sean Payton, who is one of the most brilliant offensive minds we've seen in the game ever. So if Sean Payton can't fix him, I don't know if anybody can. And I think the Saints are ready to roll the dice with Sean Payton, see what happens and what he can do with Jameis Winston. And that's something we'll find out. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. Selection Sunday is here. Tournament brackets will come out shortly. We'll dive into that all next week. But I want to finish up our conversation here on free agency, right? We were just talking about free agency before we went to break, and I was saying how this is going to be, it's truly going to be the most turbulent, volatile year of free agency we've seen. It's just going to be so different than normal because there's going to be so many players out there that are getting cut, that are either getting let go, getting traded, trying to get their deals restructured some way, somehow, specifically so these teams can get under the cap or find more money to spend in free agency because remember, this year's cap is $182.5 million. It is $16 lower than what the normal cap would have been. Actually, way lower than that because the normal cap, if it was a normal year without a pandemic, it would have gone up. So it would have gone up from 198.2. It would have gone up more than that, probably 16 million up, right? So actually, I don't know. I just made that up. I don't know exactly how much it would have gone up, but instead it's gone down. And that is 16 million is a lot of money. And as we mentioned earlier in the show, this is a hard cap. This is a hard cap. So teams cannot be above the cap. It's not allowed. It's not like the NBA where it's a soft cap, where if you're $1 or $2 above the cap, that's fine. You pay a luxury tax. And if owners want to do that, so be it. It's not the MLB where there is no cap. This is a hard cap. Every team must start the season below $182.5 million. But the most fascinating part about free agency, because of that cap situation, is, think about this. Usually, when a player hits free agency, it's because they clearly weren't living up to what that team wanted, right? That's why they didn't re-sign you. But this year is different. This year, there are players who are free agents because teams just don't have the money to re-sign you. It's not like, hey, you're a good player, but your position, because it's all based on the market value, right? The reason Dak Prescott got the amount of money he got, it's not because he's won Super Bowls. It's not because he's better than Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson or Patrick Mahomes, so he deserves more money than them, or Deshaun Watson. No, it's because this is the time, and the market indicates that quarterbacks, the going rate for quarterbacks is this much money, and if your contract comes up when at the right time, which Dax has, then you have to get paid that much. That's what the market dictates, right? So usually players get let go because they just weren't up to the market value. They're good players, but it wasn't, hey, you're not this good. You're not $40 million good, or you're not $18 million, whatever the position, right? Well, in this year, it's completely different. It's, hey, you are this good, but we can't pay you it because we don't have the money because the cap went down because of the pandemic. So there's going to be so many players on the market this year where we've never seen this before. We've never seen this many players and this many good players get cut or released. Usually, that's just not how it is. But because of this year, there will be no constraints. Like, these guys will be able to go wherever they want. And in some instances, this year, more than any other year, is the best year to have salary cap space, right? Like if you're a franchise out there, if you're a fan of the Jets or the Jaguars or the Colts or the Patriots or the Dolphins, one of these teams that has money to spend, boy, you should be happy. Because there's a lot of teams out there that don't have money to spend. They don't. So if your team is one of the teams that has money to spend, players are going to gravitate towards those teams because they want their money. And you can actually spend money. You actually have the money to spend. So some of these teams that are letting go of players, they're doing that because they don't have that money to spend. And these other teams, like the Jets, like the Colts, like the Patriots, like the Jaguars, this is really their year to purge. It's their year to spin and build that team up. Get that team better than where it was last year. And this is a little PSA to all the fans out there, all right? In the coming weeks, you are going to see a lot of players on your team, and some of these players will be very good. They will get cut. And you just have to understand why. Don't get mad at your team. It's not their fault. It's not because the team doesn't want them. They just literally can't pay them. Now, it is different. There is a different situation. If your team does have the money to pay them and they're letting them go, that is a whole different situation, like a team out there that we're going to talk about in just a minute, next segment, that is and always has been, for some reason, willing to let players go when they need to re-sign them. And it's starting to get to a point where it's like, why? Why are you doing this? So that's different. You should get mad at your teams for that. Your teams should spend as much money as they possibly can. That is how this works. But for the teams that are right there and they can't spend anymore, that is why they're letting these players go. It's a must. The NFL is a salary cap league. It's not Major League Baseball, where you can spend endless amounts of money. And one of those teams that will be in that situation is Dallas. Dallas is over the cap. They have massive contracts everywhere you turn, left and right. I mean, they have some of the biggest contracts for every single position almost. And they're going to have to make some tough decisions on what to do. And there will be players cut because they just have too much money going out to players right now. And honestly, not even good play to show for it. So some of these players that are getting top of the line money haven't even been showing up on Dallas. Another one of those teams that is clearly not trying to spend money, so the opposite of what Dallas is doing, because Dallas is spending money, just might not be spending it the right way, but they are spending money. A team that is not trying to spend money is the Green Bay Packers. Is it time for Aaron Rodgers to start putting some serious pressure on this organization? This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'll explain what I mean by that right after the break. Don't go anywhere. I am your host, Kayvon. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. We'll be right back after this. Thank you. Bye.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. Segment number 4. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. What a great time of the year it is for sports fans. In that amazing month where you've got March Madness starting this week, right? I mean, really, March Madness has been going all week, last week as well, because of tournament play, right? That conference tournament play, we've had some big upsets. We've had some buzzer beaters. Tournament play is officially here, and then we start NCAA, the big March Madness tournament, next week, this coming Thursday, and the bracket comes out tonight on Sunday, which is going to be super exciting. Some things we're looking at the bracket. Who are the 4-1 seeds? We thought going into conference play last week that it's going to be Gonzaga number 1 overall. That has not changed. They went through the whole season undefeated. They won their conference tournament. They are locked in to the best possible seed you can get. After that, we thought it would maybe be like Baylor and then Michigan, and then that 4th team was probably going to be Illinois, right? Well, now that Baylor and Michigan both lost before even making the finals of their conference tournaments, I think, and Illinois has made the finals, and let me double check if I'm correct here. I think that finals is over. Oh, it's in overtime right now. Illinois and Ohio State are in overtime, and Illinois is up 80-79. So even if Illinois loses this final to Ohio State, they're still going to be a number 1 seed because of the teams that they beat and how good their respective conference is. If they beat Ohio State in the finals right now, they should be the second best number 1 seed behind Gonzaga. If Ohio State beats Illinois, they might set up a case to jump to that 1 seed. So those are the teams that will be in conversation for the 1 seed. You've got Michigan, you've got Baylor, you've got Illinois, you've got Ohio State, right? Then you'll look at the 2 seeds. Who are the Alabama? They won their conference tournament. Could they possibly jump up to a 1 seed? I think they'll be a 2 seed. I think they'll probably be the first or second best 2 seed. But those are things to watch. And then also you got to watch the last 4 teams in, right? Joe Lunardi right now has Utah State as the last team in, as well as Syracuse, Louisville, and Drake. Those are the last 4 teams in. And the first 4 out are Wichita State, Colorado State, St. Louis, and Ole Miss, with Memphis as the 5th one out. So those are some teams to watch. Big storylines. Duke is probably not going to make the tournament. They were probably going to have to win the whole ACC tournament to make it. So that's pretty crazy that Duke's not going to be in there. Kentucky had a terrible year. They won't be in there as well. We do believe that Michigan State should make it. And right now, Joe Lunardi does have them in the tournament. But we'll see exactly where he has them ranked. So a couple of things to follow as we go into Selection Sunday here. Also, some breaking news. Drew Brees has announced retirement. He will be finally retiring after a very long and impressive Hall of Fame career. A very, congratulations to him on his outstanding career. First ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. Even as a Falcons fan, I am 1,000% comfortable enough to say that. I mean, he is a game changer. He really was, the first, one of the first. Doug Flutie was there as well back in the day, but Drew Brees was really one of the first to be a shorter, and I put air quotes around shorter, but for the quarterback position, it's always been you got to be tall, right? You got to be able to see above the offensive line perfectly. No issues about that. If you're not, scouts, general managers, coaches, that was something they worried about. Drew Brees showed he can be a 5,000-plus yard passer a year, a Hall of Famer, while being a shorter quarterback. So then it, kind of blazed the way open for guys like Russell Wilson and Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. They're doing it all in different ways. Those guys are more athletic than Drew Brees. Drew Brees is more accurate. So Drew Brees showed if you're accurate enough, doesn't matter how tall you are. If you're an accurate thrower of the football, you can make it in the NFL. You don't have to be 6'4", 6'5". You can make it in the NFL as a 6'1", 6 foot. Kyler Murray's case, he's like 5'10", I think, if you're an accurate enough passer. So those are things to look at. of when you point to Drew Brees' career, other than the obvious, is he won a championship. He won probably, now this is debatable for a lot of people, but he probably won one of the most iconic Super Bowl championships in NFL history because of what was going on with Hurricane Katrina the years before that, right? Remember, when Hurricane Katrina happened, the Saints had to play every single game on the road. They didn't even get to play any games at home because the Superdome was being used for shelter for a lot of the people that were destroyed, and their communities and their houses were destroyed by Hurricane Katrina. Then finally, once everything got fixed up and they were able to get back in there, Drew Brees and Sean Payton led this team to a Super Bowl, and everyone says, that was for Hurricane Katrina. Like that a lot of people correlate and kind of point to Hurricane Katrina and that 2009 Super Bowl victory. So that was a very iconic and big victory against Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts. One thing from that game, if you guys remember back then, the onside kick. Sean Payton has always been known to be a gutsy play caller, right? He goes for it. He calls, big wild plays, trick plays. He'll step out of the box a little bit and dare to go for something crazy. To start the second half, the Saints were kicking off to the Colts, and they were down. And he said, we need a spark here. And they went for the onside kick and got it. And that kind of sparked the comeback, and they went on to win that Super Bowl, which was super, super impressive. And you don't see a lot of coaches willing to do an onside kick at halftime or to start the third quarter. That's just, to start the third quarter going into it. That's wild. You just don't see that happen. So big congrats to his career, and I guarantee you he's going to have a remarkable after football career with what he's going to do as a broadcaster. He's already a great guy in the community. He's clearly a great dad. His kids love him. We've seen so many videos of him and his kids throwing the football and kind of what they want to be when they grow up, maybe become quarterbacks as well. So we'll see. But congrats to him. And honestly, as a Falcons fan, I'm excited. Okay, I'm sorry, but we don't have to deal with looking across the division and playing Drew Brees twice a year anymore. So that is a very big thank you on that. Now, there's rumors they'll go trade for Russell Wilson. That's not going to happen. There's no way. They don't have enough assets to do that. I mean, anything can happen, so I don't want to overstep, but it would have to be a lot. I mean, a lot would have to happen for them to get Russell Wilson. So I don't want to say, as a Falcons fan, that's the last thing I want to see. I think most likely we'll see Jameis Winston, which will be interesting, right? Jameis Winston with Sean Payton, it could be scary. Jameis has a huge turnover issue. Can Sean Payton fix that? That's something we're going to have to watch. But I want to get to this now with the Green Bay Packers, as I mentioned earlier. The Packers are, this is, let me start here. Let me step back for a second, okay? Something I've been monitoring throughout the sports world as we've gone forward here is there is a real trend that we are starting to see in the sports world, and it's aggressive teams win championships. Plain and simple, right? The more aggressive the team, the higher chance you have to win. Sure, you will swing and miss here and there, but you have to at least attempt to swing the bat. You have to at least attempt to hit the home run. You've got to give it all that power. You can't sit back anymore because it's also becoming where you can win immediately if you're aggressive and you do it the right way. Now, obviously, you have to be aggressive in the right way. The moves have to work out, like Toronto trading for Kawhi Leonard. They needed one more piece. They were a team that was doing really well in the regular season every year, and then they would get to the playoffs, and they would come up short year in and year out. So they figured, we need one more piece. They picked up their bat, they swung, and they hit on Kawhi Leonard. And they did that knowing very well they might only have him for 1 year. What happened? They won the championship, and he left the next year. But it was worth it because they won. KD to the Warriors. The Warriors knew to take down LeBron, they needed help. They go out and get KD, they win 2 in a row immediately. LeBron and the Lakers, they trade for AD. In their very first year, they win it all. It never used to be this quick, right? Usually it was, well, the players have to get acquainted with each other. They have to learn the new system. They have to get the right chemistry going on. But now it's, you can win right away if you make those big moves, if you're aggressive. Why is that? Why is that changing? Teams aren't satisfied anymore. Teams have realized we can do more. It's not anymore, let's get LeBron. Okay, we now have the best player in the world. You would think we're good, right? We're okay. I mean, we have LeBron freaking James. It's all good. No, it doesn't work that way. It's, let's get LeBron, and now let's go out and add the best big man in the game as well in AD. It's not, hey, we have 2 of the greatest shooters ever in KD and Curry. It's now, hey, we have 2 of the greatest shooters ever and room to add another superstar. So let's go get Kevin Durant. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers went out and got Tom Brady. Did they stop there? No. They added Gronk. Then they added Antonio Brown. They just won the title, and what's the first thing they did? They gave Tom Brady an extension so that they can have more money to add to more pieces. Right? To go get more pieces to help them win another title. They just won the title, and they already are trying to add more. The Dodgers kept winning their division title. They went to the World Series 2 years in a row, but they weren't winning it. So what did they decide to do? Let's go add the best player in baseball, or one of the best in baseball in Mookie Betts. Look at the Rams. The Rams went 10-6 in the toughest division in football last year. They went on the road and won a playoff game against Russell Wilson. And then they said, oh, you know what? We need to upgrade at quarterback. So they shipped Jared Goff out of there. Jared Goff was 42-20. 22 games over 500 as the starting quarterback for the Rams. And he just got shipped out after winning a road playoff game. Are you seeing the trend here? Good is not enough anymore. Shoot, great isn't even enough sometimes. These teams want perfection. They want zero room for error. They want as close to a sure thing as you can possibly get in sports. And in sports, nothing is a sure thing because of injuries. But that's why you go out and add a Kevin Durant to a 73-win Warriors team. That gives you the closest thing to a sure thing. So why has this changed? It's because the business of sports has changed. These franchises are worth, they're not worth $1 million anymore. They're worth $1 billion now, right? These owners, they want more. They want wins. They want championships. Being a good GM doesn't keep your job anymore. You have to be a great one. Being an above 500 coach doesn't make your job safe anymore. No, you have to be a Super Bowl winner. But it doesn't stop there. Owners want more. Doug Peterson won a championship, got a statue of him outside the Eagles Stadium, and now he is without a job sitting on his couch within 3 years. You don't get a pass anymore for what you did in the past. It doesn't work that way. It's what have you done for me recently type of business. So my question becomes this. What have the Packers done for Aaron Rodgers recently? I'm sitting here watching Tampa Bay do everything they can to keep everyone on their roster. I mean, they're trying everything. They're restructuring contracts. They're paying Tom Brady more. They're keeping him here longer just so that they can bring in more pieces for Brady. While the Packers are possibly, they didn't franchise tag Aaron Jones, so they might be able to re-sign him. And they're letting their Pro Bowl center, Corey Lindsey, leave. Like, You do understand, Green Bay, that a center and a running back are two of the closest things to a QB in terms of success and taking the pressure off your QB, right? Oh, wait. You had J.J. Watt wanting to come play for you, but you didn't want to spend that much money. Why? The best team in football, the Tampa Bay Bucks, are reworking deals with their quarterback so they can re-sign their stud pass rusher, Shaq Barrett. The Dodgers got Mookie Betts. They won a World Series and said, now let's go get the Cy Young winner in Trevor Bauer. While the Packers lost once again in the NFC Championship game and said, let's get rid of our starting center, the guy who is supposed to protect our top 3 quarterback in the NFL, Aaron Rodgers. What are they doing? You're losing a Pro Bowl center in Corey Lindsey. You maybe might bring back Aaron Jones. Who knows? The goal in football is to draft good players and then not let them go. I understand this year is different because of the cap situation, but Green Bay, Tampa's figuring it out. Why can't you? You just lost to Tampa, except they're taking steps forward, you're taking steps back. Rodgers, it's time for Rodgers to put some serious pressure on the organization. Every team has a capologist for a reason. You can make these deals work. You go out and you draft Aaron Jones in the 5th round and Corey Lindsey in the 5th round. They paid them nothing for all the years they were here. They became great, and now they're like, yeah, it's a little tight for our budget. Let's let them go. You wonder why Aaron Rodgers is a little tense sometimes, gets a little mad sometimes. That's not the way to do business with to help out one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen in Aaron Rodgers. He's getting older, and he's tired of losing in the NFC Championship game every single year. I mean, there's a trend here, people. Look at the Dodgers. They lost in the World Series 2 years in a row, and they said enough is enough. So they went out and got literally the best or second best player in baseball in Mookie Betts. The Lakers went and got LeBron James, and they said, we're tired of not winning, though we want more. They gave away all of their young pieces to go and get, who? Anthony Davis. What happened? It paid off. The Warriors won 1 title, and then they went 73-9, and they got embarrassed by losing to LeBron in the finals. They said, we're not going to ever let something like that happen again, and they went and got KD. It didn't take numerous years of losing before these teams decided we've got to change something. Why are the Packers different? Why are the Packers losing every single year in the NFC Championship game, and instead they go and draft a quarterback? Instead, they go and draft another running back. Instead, they let their center go, their Pro Bowl center. None of this makes sense to me, and if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm getting really, really tired of this because you don't know how many more years you're going to want to play or you're going to be able to play at this top of a level, and the Packers are not doing anything to help relieve some of that pressure and bring more talent in there to help you get over the hump that, let's be honest, they haven't been able to get over for a very long time now. It's not something that you want to keep seeing your organization do. I don't get it. I don't get it one bit. Maybe you guys can explain it a little bit better to me. Let me know. Reach out to me at GSMC_sports on Twitter. Or you can reach out to me on my own Twitter page at Kayvon_sports. Either way, I will always respond to you. We'll have a great conversation. I'll read out your tweets. I know a lot of you guys were tweeting at me the other day. I'll read them out on air like this. We've got a long summer to talk all things sports. Things are just ramping up now with Selection Sunday and free agency starting. The draft is right around the corner. Major League Baseball is going to get underway. Before we know it, it will be week 1 of college football. it's an exciting time to be a sports fan. The NBA playoffs, didn't even mention them. They're about to start, as well as the NHL playoffs. They'll start in a couple months. So it's an exciting time to be a sports fan. And I want to thank you all for joining me on this GSMC Sports Podcast, which is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show, write a nice review. That always helps us out. Please do. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night, and we will talk to you again on Wednesday. Remember, that show will come out Thursday morning, and it will be all about filling out your brackets, picking the best games. So make sure you hit that bell button to get that update and listen to see who I think is going to go and make a long NCAA run. Have fun tonight watching the bracket release. We'll talk to you again later this week.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.